Evolutionists often tout the explanatory ability of evolution, but one thing evolution cannot explain is morality. There is no benefit or survival value in protecting the lives of others. It is against the theory of natural selection to save orphan children from a house on fire. Yet repeatedly we see acts of selflessness. The very existence of moral laws is proof of a supreme moral lawgiver. The very premise of survival of the fittest is that the weak die off, leaving only the strong. This necessarily implies that the hero of the evolutionary story is death, not charity, not compassion, and not self-sacrifice. It would be fitting for our morality to be the final nail in the coffin for evolution. I just had to investigate. Eighteenth-century philosopher David Hume famously pointed out that, logically speaking, you cannot derive what ought to be from what is. In modern times, William Lane Craig has restated this as you can't get an ought from an is. The point of evolution, right or wrong, is to explain what is and what was. So by this logic, it can't possibly prescribe what ought to be. So it can't be intrinsically moral nor immoral. The problem arises when you realize that it also doesn't prescribe what ought not to be. This means that we do indeed have the freedom to do anything we want. We can murder, rape, steal, lie, do drugs, and be promiscuous. Using evolution as our moral guide means we have no authority to tell people what they can't or shouldn't do. What evolution does propose, however, is that there are consequences to our actions. With this insight, although we can't propose any particular morality, we can explain how our morality has developed, and even why everyone seems to have their own unique form of morality. As proposed by Darwin, evolution happens not to individuals, but to populations of individuals over time. With this in mind, we have to understand how morality affects the population, rather than just the individual. So first we need to examine whether or not morality benefits a population. Imagine two separate societies on two separate islands, one being what we would call moral, being people who care for each other, who appease each other, are honest, and who abstain from excess indulgence, such as drugs and promiscuity. The other being what we might call immoral, being people who are only out for themselves, who feel free to undercut each other, deceive each other, and have no sexual boundaries. These two societies exist in isolation of each other, so they are both left to their own devices. Ask yourself, which one has the higher chance of survival? The immoral society, being comprised of self-obsessed individuals, would quickly find themselves internally at odds, perhaps to the point of killing each other, but definitely to the point of allowing the less fit individuals to die off. There could likely be a few winners in this society who continue their bloodlines. The most fit among the members of the society would certainly be exponentially stronger than those whose bloodlines did not continue, but they would also be left to face the elements of nature in significantly smaller numbers, thus increasing their vulnerability and susceptibility to extinction. Being excessively promiscuous, they would also expose themselves far more often to disease. The moral society, being comprised of selfless individuals who look after each other, would certainly have more members. Being more concerned with social cohesion, they would be much more cooperative. Caring for the less fit members would ensure their survival, so the overall fitness of the society might be reduced, but this would also be offset by the sheer number of the individuals. Being that there are more individuals, there would be a greater variety of diseases within that population, but being perhaps monogamous, the likelihood of any individual contracting deadlier diseases is reduced. Of course, the first thing you should be saying to yourself is that neither of these societies could truly exist among humans, but this mental exercise shows that the benefits of morality to a society should be obvious. Ants, bees, and termites exemplify this to an extreme, being comprised of mostly sterile individual drones who cooperate absolutely with each other. Although they lack individuality, it can be argued that ants, not humans, are the most successful animals on the planet. In spite of the fact that an individual ant can be squashed with ease by an individual human, ants are so successful that their worldwide biomass is virtually equal to the biomass of the entire human race. One of the closest mammalian analogs to an ant society, vampire bats, shows elements of the same type of cooperation. Like ants, vampire bats will regurgitate food into hungry or starving members of the society when necessary. Unlike ants, however, bats tend to be more selective in this practice, choosing members who are either more fit or who have shown the same consideration in the past. This has been identified as a very rudimentary form of altruism. Chimps and bonobos, according to genetic and morphological evidence, are humanity's closest relatives. Although they do not display human morality, they do show intelligence, the ability to comprehend symbolic communication, social norms, a realization of self, and an understanding of the concept of continuity. These capabilities are considered to be the foundations of morality. In most mammals, when two individuals are in physical conflict and one of them realizes they are the loser in the conflict, that individual will lay down on their back, exposing their abdomen, in essence offering a clean kill. The victor will almost invariably cease their hostility as the point has been made. Chimps also show submission and mercy in conflict, indicating that the individual is important to the group regardless of the disagreement. Human groups tend to be considerably larger than most ape fusion-fission groups. Instead of groups ranging from 8 to 20, human groups in the wilderness tend to include upwards of 100 members or more. With these larger groups comes more social complications. To maintain the survival of the tribe requires the continued larger numbers, which relies upon cooperation. Those who kill other members are a visible threat to all of the other members, so it is no surprise to see members seek to remove murderers. Thieves sow discontent amongst their neighbors, so again it is no surprise to see members of the tribe seek to remove thieves. With such a large and concentrated population, a simple disease could wipe the group out. So it is also no surprise to see enforced norms on promiscuity, regardless of whether they conflict with our basic instincts. Meanwhile, the tendency to unconsciously conform to these types of societal norms would naturally be selected. Caring for and cooperating with others is an evolutionary advantage to communal groups. Its importance only increases as groups grow larger, as does a larger brain, which allows the individual to better adapt to the peculiarities of each individual in their group. With tendencies toward nonviolent interaction amongst other tribe members, the need to negotiate for favors or consideration leads to perhaps an even more complicated concept than morality: politeness. Whether or not a supernatural entity was behind it, and whether or not it is objective, morality is a survival strategy. While nature still favors the fit, cooperation and interdependence broadens the scope of what it means to be fit. Instead of death, birth is the hero of the story. More individuals survive, meaning more ideas are shared, which leads to more advancements, which in turn leads to even greater chances for survival. Morality isn't just explained by evolution, it is required by it if a communal species is to survive. Another example of how creationism taught me real science. If there's a creationist argument you think I should investigate, please comment below. It may become the basis for a future episode. In the meantime, subscribe and make sure you don't miss it.